Yeoman second-class Joshua Kelly, who goes by Harpy Daniels, announced back in November that he was the Navy's new digital ambassador. Their attempts to increase interest among young people amongst a historic recruitment crisis. A survey from the Ronald Reagan Institute found that only 13% of 18 to 29-year-olds are highly willing to join the military.
And why would anybody be willing to join that military? It seems like we're in some sort of Twilight Zone episode. It's absolutely disgusting. You know, it's very strange that that is the type of person that they go to go motivate men and women to join a military. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. Let me know what comes to mind when I say a typical Russian man or what Russia is like. Is it something like this?
Как вы его учили? Это так сложно, мне кажется.
Игра, только игра.
Это игра, это все игры.
Во. Все, валяй его, за туда его, за.
Назад, на него, прям назад, вали. Ну.
And now let's take a look at the American counterpart, the American Baron man. Hello and welcome to another episode here on this channel where we're going to be talking about the caliber of men. And to talk about the caliber of men, by that I mean, you know, the qualities of the American man and the qualities of the Russian man. And what better way to compare men than compare the men which are serving in the military? That is going to be one thing that we're going to be looking at today in this video. But all jokes aside, guys, I know that for the most part, when foreigners talk about Russia or when they think about Russia, they're usually thinking about guys wrestling bears and, you know, the Russian people having to survive winter. This is something that I'm going to be talking about later on in the video because it certainly does mold the typical Russian man. But first, let's talk about the American man. Before we even become men, we're children. And it seems like in the United States, there seems to be a lot more open-mindedness to kind of pushing an agenda onto little kids or not letting boys be boys anymore. For instance, look at this.
It's 2018. There's going to be drag kids in the world. And I'm one of them. I got into drag when I watched the first episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. I stopped playing with my toys because my mom was watching it.
What's strange to me is that that boy himself says that he was influenced by a show where it's basically a drag queen. I think it's RuPaul or something like this. So even from a little boy, you're in danger of not fulfilling your greatness, of being able to become a man. This is the problem in the United States. Why do I say it's a problem? Well, I think that we shouldn't be bothering little kids with this type of stuff. You know, we shouldn't be bothering them, whether they boys or girls. We should just let them play and not influence them at all. But our president thinks otherwise.
I also hope Congress will get to my desk the Equality Act to protect LGBTQ Americans. To all transgender Americans watching at home, especially young people, you're so brave. I want you to know your president has your back.
So as you can see, it feels like in modern time, it's harder and harder to be a real man in the United States. Now, please do not get confused. When I say real man, I mean a person who can provide, a person who can serve, you know, the traditional thing. Not like traditional like 1950s. I mean like traditional like 10,000 BC when you're hunting and gathering. You know, the women had their thing and the men had to go hunt and take care of the cave. This is what I'm talking about, traditional. It seems like in the United States, that role is disappearing. Now let's compare what I just said with the Russian people. Here's Vladimir Putin giving a speech about what he believes should be done about the trans rights for little kids or in general.
Разве мы хотим, чтобы в наших школах с начальных классов детям навязывали извращения, которые ведут к деградации и вымиранию? Чтобы им вдалбливали, что кроме женщины и мужчины якобы существуют еще некие гендеры. И предлагали сделать операцию по смене пола. Но разве мы все этого хотим для своей страны и для своих детей? Для нас все это неприемлемо. У нас другое, свое будущее. Повторю, диктатура западных элит направлена против такое полное отрицание человека, неспровержение веры и традиционных ценностей, подавление свободы приобретает черты откровенного сатанизма.
You can see by his words where he's talking about how they will not harm the kids, how they will give them an opportunity at life without these things that they shouldn't even have to be worried about. This is one thing that I did realize was happening in Russia while I was living there. You know, the kids were outside playing. There was very low social media. They weren't connected to an iPad looking at drag queen shows. You know, this is a big difference. I mean, I saw a lot of young kids fishing from 9 years old up until 15 years old, all by themselves. These are the type of activities that is healthy for a young boy to become a man. And that is ultimately what I said this video is going to be about. The difference or the qualities between an American man and a Russian man. And so now we understand how the Russian boy and the American boy start off. These are two very different societies. Now, of course, the United States is big. There's conservative states that don't allow this type of stuff. But for the majority of the country, the laws that our president is talking about, he wants to implement this to cover as a blanket the entire United States, and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, also is making laws to blanket the entirety of the Russian Federation. So keep that in mind. And now imagine those young boys reach adult age, 18 years old. Now let's talk about the sort of life they're going to have. It is said that people who come from miserable environments turn out to be great warriors. And this is no exception for the Russian people. We're going to start off with them. I think the majority of Russia actually goes through 4 seasons. You know, they start off in the summer, and then the autumn comes, then winter comes, spring, summer, and it goes through the whole shebang. And I have to mention this because it's very important. Miserable conditions create strong people. Have you ever heard of the saying that says that hard times create strong men, and that strong men create good times, but that good times create weak men? Have you ever heard of that? Because then after that, the cycle continues because weak men make hard times. Let me know in the comment section if you've ever heard about that, and tell me what you think. Is your country in what phase? Because it seems like the American country right now is ran by weak men creating hard times for us. And well, hopefully strong men will come from that. But right now, we're in that mess. Whereas the Russians, like I said, they have to deal with the hard weather. They have to deal with the sanctions. They have to deal with the world and the pressure on top of them. And it seems like they're always in hard times, and they're always creating strong men. And the reason why I bring up the weather and the environment is because, like I said, all of the greatest warriors in this world, in all of mankind, they usually come from extreme weathers or extreme conditions. For instance, the Vikings, they were in a miserable place and they seeked out treasures outside of their land. And why were they so good at war? Well, they were living in a horrible place, and their style of war made it way different than somebody who's just in a nice warm area where they're not having to fight amongst each other all the time because there's an abundance of food. And the Roman legions, they were recruiting from the Iberian Peninsula, in the northern part of the Iberian Peninsula, where these great warriors had been living for so long. These are the type of troops that you want in your military. This is the caliber of man that you want. You want a man who's been through a lot, whether it's bad environment conditions, like always having to fight for food, having to work very hard. This is the type of man that you're going to find in Russia, because these are the conditions that make the Russian man. When I got to Russia, you know, it wasn't so simple for me to assimilate. I had to learn how to be outside. I lived in Siberia, and so I needed to learn about nature. I needed to learn to make fire. I needed to learn to fish, to provide for my woman, to be strong enough to deal with the winter and anything that it brings. Okay, this is my Russian experience. And as many as you guys know, I'm out there in the wilderness riding tanks. Compare that to the American experience, where many of the Americans are living in major cities, especially in better weather conditions. We're talking about Florida, we're talking about all of California, we're talking about Texas. Yeah, it's a little humid, but you're not dealing with extremities where it's absolutely cold or it's absolutely hot. I know the temperatures will rise in Arizona, but for the most part, people are living inside with air conditioners. People are living in a luxurious style compared to the majority of Russia. And you know, this seems to me that a lot of people do say that Russians are living in the past, you know, they're living miserably. You know, they don't have the same technology and the same comfort as Americans, but do not get it twisted. It is not something that I believe the Russians envy, by no means. The history of the United States is a very complacent one. Up until now, since I believe the Vietnam War, we have not had a draft, or we have not had some sort of major mobilization. Now, I am not saying that that is a good thing, but in the United States, a man is not forced to serve in any way. This is not a mandatory thing, unlike in Russia. In Russia, the men who are healthy enough, who don't have the disabilities that is going to keep them away from serving, they will end up serving. I believe it's 1 year now of military service, where I believe it used to be 2 years. Why am I mentioning this? Well, this will raise the caliber of man in your society. When you go through a military training, when you go through a basic training at the minimum of any military branch, you're going to be instilled discipline. You're going to be instilled honor and commitment. You're going to be instilled the respect towards your own country, because you will learn what it takes to defend your country, the meaning of suffering, the time that you'll never get back. Even if you never see combat, even giving 1 year of life to service to your country, this is an honorable thing in my mind, because this is time that you'll never get back. I like to compare the military with jail. They have many similarities in the way that the time that is taken from you, you'll never get back, and that is a major sacrifice. Obviously, in jail, it's a bad sacrifice because you've done something bad, but in the military is the opposite. This is a great sacrifice. Time is very valuable in this world. We already know that service is mandatory in Russia, but it's not so in the United States. And it is so embarrassing how low men have fallen in the United States that they've created programs like this.
Give a what you say! You listen up! You understand me? Yes, go!
Scares the shit out of me.
Please be respectful. Do you understand?
It's not about physical. It's not about mental. It's about what's inside your soul. This is an absolute easy breakthrough, and I am being reborn right now.
One of the greatest things I've ever done in my entire life.
Can you imagine how embarrassing, how humiliating your life has to be, where you pay money so that you can be hazed into thinking that you're a real man? And you know, I don't actually support these type of programs. These are ex-military guys who are using their experience to steal money from the normal, typical American man. This shows you exactly how weak American men are right now, that they're willing to pay thousands of dollars to be degraded instead of joining the military and actually serving, to pay these losers, these ex-military guys, to haze them and make them run around in the mud and the water. And why don't I like these men? Because I don't identify with these men, these military men who abuse their circumstances, who abuse American men like this. But anyways, you're not going to be seeing that type of stuff in Russia. Why? Because they have their mandatory service, they have the horrible environment sometimes, and they have a sense of honor and duty to their country. They are not manipulated in any way by their government. This is just the standard Russian man. I've witnessed this myself in Russia. You know, a lot of people think that those people are brainwashed. Well, I believe that if you think they're brainwashed in Russia, you've already seen the clip of that little boy thinking he's some sort of drag queen. But it wasn't always like that. You know, in the United States, we had higher quality of men. But this was basically in the 1960s, men like this.
Developed a program that assures every student of physical excellence. Exercise on the grip swing puts muscles on the least athletic. Extension push-ups are among the toughest of the drills.
And, you know, during the Vietnam War, we had the draft, but there was many volunteers. More men were drafted in World War II than in Vietnam. And you know what? Men were willing to serve in those wars, whether they accepted it or not. They stood up to the occasion. They rose to the occasion. They served. They did their time, and they did the manly thing to do. And these videos that I'm going to show you right now is a generation that would probably never exist again in the United States. If you enjoy these topic conversations on this channel, please do remember to comment down below and subscribe, please, because it does help the channel a lot while I'm outside of Russia. I do actually enjoy speaking my mind and reading your comments. Let me know what you guys think. Is the Russian man a lot manlier right now, or is the American man a lot manlier right now? Which one has better qualities at this moment? Which one do you identify with more, the Russian or the American style of being a man? Because for me, I'm telling you right now that it is so far gone what the American man was that, guys, when I went to Russia, they used to ask me, hey, is it true that every American guy is a trans? I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Meanwhile, I'm thinking like they're all wrestling with bears, like I told you in the beginning of the video, but to them, it's the complete opposite. They think that we're out there, you know, shopping for handbags and chopping off our peepees. I truly appreciate your guys' comments in the comment section. Now remember that it is like a forum. I hope that you guys can talk amongst each other, read the comments, you know, have conversations with each other. Some of you guys are Russian, some of you guys are Westerners, because what I just mentioned in this video doesn't only apply to the United States. The Germans in Europe, the French in Europe, and, you know, the majority of Europe actually follows what we give to them, and you know, they fall right into line. When we do something, they do something. So amongst yourselves, comment how it is in your country. Talk to somebody from another country. We're connected by the internet. It is a beautiful thing. I feel that you know, there's a lot of great potential in the United States. I think it's very clear that the Russian man is a lot manlier and they have manlier qualities. But I feel that in the United States, it's not completely gone. You know, these very bad leaders, these weak men, are creating the most miserable conditions for the American people. And I think that the Americans will rise also to the occasion, and they will meet, you know, the Russian man. We will reach a caliber as great as the Russians. Because although, you know, we don't have that miserable weather, we don't have that pressure of the world on us, we are getting enough pressure by our own leadership, by our own country, to create strong men again. My generation had weak men, and I'm talking about Obama. You know, he put us into these wars. He kept us in these wars and didn't let us fight, and he made us stronger men. My generation was a warrior generation. Almost all of my friends fought in war. And then we skipped a generation. The generation that we have now don't want anything to do with the military, don't want anything to do with serving their country, don't want anything to do with becoming actual men, you know, playing their role in society. But now we're going to get to that new generation. And I'm telling you guys, if you guys actually hate on the United States, I think you should relax. I think that the next generation of Americans will make very good friends to the Russian people, and perhaps things can get a lot better between our countries. The things that I mentioned that happen in the United States, as far as people growing up the wrong way, also happen in Russia. But the problem in the United States is that it is pushed upon the American people, right? It is force-fed down our throats. And ultimately, the Russian people don't have that problem. And that's where the divergence comes, where the government protects the people in Russia of this type of brainwashing, and the United States, actually, they push it down on us. And so the quality of man is degrading in the United States. And I hope that, like I said, the new generation can carry that flag high and proud. And when I'm talking about that flag, I'm talking about that man flag, okay? Because let me tell you, it is not looking good for our men in the United States. And I just hope that if you're watching this, you're not one of those problem people, man. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave as many comments as you want. Remember to like and subscribe, please. It helps this channel so much. There's a lot of people watching who are not subscribed. If you want to know more about Russia, if you want to see more Russian content, subscribe, because I will be going back to Russia soon. And I always love making the discussion videos. Bye.